This is one of those topics that no one really wants to think about, but if you're a parent, a homeowner, married, or helping take care of aging parents, it's something that honestly deserves a little attention. I'm talking about estate planning. And before you tune out thinking it's complicated or expensive, that's actually why I want to mention Trust and Will. Trust and Will makes estate planning feel way less intimidating than it sounds. They offer modern, attorney-designed wills and trusts that you can create online. And the process is surprisingly straightforward. In fact, you can create a will in as little as 30 minutes. That includes things like guardianship for your kids or pets, how your assets are distributed, and even healthcare directives. Don't wait until it's too late. Protect your loved ones with Trust and Will, the most trusted name in online estate planning. Go to trustandwill.com/future to get 20% off. That's trustandwill.com/future for 20% off. trustandwill.com/FUTURE.
Alberta will be going to the polls as Premier Smith pressures Ottawa for more control over immigration. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
All the news you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Tough times are coming to Wild Rose Country, and so is a referendum. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith is triggering her own referendum, not about an independent Alberta, but certainly one that seeks to wrestle more control from Ottawa. During a 13-minute speech broadcast across Alberta, Smith said her province is in a deep financial hole, and that Ottawa's out-of-control immigration policy is a big reason why. So this fall, residents of that province will be asked about that issue and more in a referendum. During her speech, Premier Smith praised the immigration policies of former Prime Minister Stephen Harper, calling them responsible and constrained. She also called the vast majority of immigrants amazing and a source of strength for the province. But she said everything changed when the Liberals were elected in 2015.
And then came Justin Trudeau's disastrous open border immigration policies, which have caused an unprecedented strain on our healthcare, education, and other social programs. In just the last 5 years of Trudeau's tenure, Alberta grew by almost 600,000 people to more than 5 million, all while Ottawa throttled our most important job-creating industries and prioritized immigration away from economic migrants and instead focused on international students, temporary workers, and asylum seekers. Adding 600,000 people in 5 years is like adding half the city of Calgary or Edmonton in 5 years. Although sustainable immigration has always been an important part of our provincial growth model, throwing the doors wide open to anyone and everyone across the globe has flooded our classrooms, emergency rooms, and social support systems with far too many people, far too quickly.
Smith says Albertans will be asked if they support the province taking more control over immigration. It will be one of 9 questions that will be on a ballot this fall. Another question will ask Albertans if they think only Canadian citizens, permanent residents, or someone with an Alberta-approved immigration status should be eligible for social programs like healthcare and education. Smith said it's about fundamental fairness.
The fact is, Alberta taxpayers can no longer be asked to continue to subsidize the entire country through equalization and federal transfers, permit the federal government to flood our borders with new arrivals, and then give free access to our most generous in the country social programs to anyone who moves here. This is not only grossly unfair to Alberta taxpayers, but also financially crippling and undercuts the quality of our healthcare, education, and other social services.
Voters will also be asked if they support charging fees or premiums to non-permanent residents to access the healthcare and education systems. Premier Smith said the current immigration policies, along with lower oil prices, are creating a fiscal situation that is unsustainable.
In the year I became premier, the price of oil averaged $90 a barrel U.S. These strong oil prices saw our budget enjoy royalty revenue of over $25 billion and a surplus of around $12 billion, which we used to build up the Heritage Fund and pay down provincial debt. Since that time, however, the price of oil has fallen by over $30 a barrel to around $60. Each $1 drop in the price of oil means roughly $750 million less in oil royalties for the province. The result? What had been a $12 billion surplus in 2023 at $90 oil has turned into a large budget deficit at $60 oil.
So Alberta's referendum will be held October 19th. Premier Smith's speech came as her government is facing allegations that it is racist and that it's scapegoating immigrants to divert from its own mismanagement. We get more on that story from Sean Amato of City News in Edmonton.
But a social media post from her executive director is drawing fierce condemnation. On Wednesday morning, Bruce McAllister claimed that Canada has unsustainable mass immigration before writing, quote, "Why import from nations with failed systems when our Judeo-Christian heritage and principles have worked so well here?" That drew condemnation from former NDP MLA Shannon Phillips and political strategist Zane Velji and Stephen Carter.
Are we shocked by this? Are we surprised?
I kind of am with that, man. Like, I'm reading this is his real account. I also wanted to make sure that I'm not. Oh, it's still up.
They're
It's
racists.
I don't know, man.
It's okay to say it.
McAllister didn't respond to City News' request for comment, but Rob Anderson, the Premier's chief of staff, wrote in response, "Those that accuse others of racism for pointing out that current immigration levels in Canada are unsustainable should seek help. I wish Mr. Carter the best and hope he gets the assistance and attention he so clearly needs." Smith was asked about McAllister's post at a Wednesday press conference.
Western society is based on the Socratic Judeo-Christian tradition. If you go back and look about why it is we have the society we do, there's no question that there are some foundational influences to that. However, Alberta was also created since 1905 based on the immense diaspora communities that come here.
In a statement, the NDP said the Premier is scapegoating and playing the blame game for problems her government created. But the Premier defended her team's rhetoric on immigration and changes they propose to take more control of it from Ottawa. When Smith was asked what kind of immigrants she approved of, her response focused mostly on money.
You have to be a taxpayer before you start using our services. And we've had the reverse. We've had people who are heavy users of our services and might not even be a taxpayer, might not even have a prospect to get a job. And that's just that's creating a lot of tension in society, and that's something that we've got to address.
The Premier is set to answer questions about her speech on Friday morning. Sean Amato, City News, Edmonton.
And I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. And this is News Radio.
You have questions
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
on News Radio.
He's our expert in communications, crisis communications, political communications, branding, and leadership. Barry McLoughlin is back with us. He's the president of TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants, with offices in Ottawa and Washington. Barry teaches at the University of Ottawa's Professional Development Institute and at Cape Breton University's Shannon School of Business. You can follow Barry on his Substack, listen to his podcast, and he joins us every Friday, most of the time from Ottawa, where they're getting ready for another dumping of snow, probably 15 centimeters or so. Welcome back. Good to hear from you.
Great to be with you, Rob.
Yeah, good to hear from you. Well, this news about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. I mean, it may be the biggest PR crisis ever faced in the modern history of the royal family, Barry. I mean, they're using things like nothing like this has happened in almost 400 years, going back to Charles I, who was executed. What is your opinion on how Charles III is dealing with his brother?
Well, first of all, I thought it was the right thing to do. You know, I've been involved in crafting those exact statements, so every word gets looked at under a microscope. It was a low-key but very clear-cut, statement by him. He actually did refer to the fact that, the law must take its course. That's a very important thing, because when you're actually the head of state it is very powerful over there in every way of perception and so on, so that he can't look like in any way he's interfering in the Crown prosecutor's actions. So he's certainly done the right thing on that, following a full, fair, and proper process. So that's important. And this issue is going to be investigated in the appropriate manner by the appropriate authorities. So he's really doing a very straightforward kind of statement. It would not be right for me to comment further on this matter. So he's already telling you this is all you're going to get from him on this and his family. That's a very important signal. So all in all, he did the right thing with this. It just took a long time, for him. He began to take actions, moving him out of these houses and castles and everything else. He began stripping him of his titles. He knew something like this was coming, and it could be more to come. So at least it's the first round, and boy, they're going to be battening down the hatches here for quite some time to deal with this scandal.
I mean, what do you think is ahead for Andrew? What do you think is ahead for the Royals, just given his atrocious behavior?
Yeah.
The way the media is in the UK. I mean, the media in the UK is merciless, Barry.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. No, I think the trade, as a trade representative of Great Britain, there he was sharing, documents that were sealed and should not have been shared, with Epstein. So it brings Epstein in, and then we know all the photographs and everything else of Andrew being deeply involved with Epstein in these. We don't know how far, but enough evidence there that he was involved with young girls. So that could still come, and then that's a nightmare. He would be the first prosecuted so far. Nobody in the United States has been prosecuted, so he could be the first. But I think that's down the road. I think they're keeping their focus right now on something they think they have tangible evidence on, and that's his role as the trade representative.
Okay, let me ask you about another developing story here. The United States Supreme Court, within the last hour and a half or so, has rebuked President Trump's tariff policy. For the most part, this is a very conservative court. Many of the justices on the Supreme Court were appointed by President Trump. What do you think Trump is going to say today? What do you expect to hear from him? Is he going to delegitimize the justices that he put on the court? I wonder.
Well, it's a really good question, Mark. I don't have the obviously answer to that, but he never admits defeat. That we know. He will disagree with them. He'll find some way to, you can't really come back and do another legal claim on the Supreme Court. They've made the decision now. So, he will do something that will, play slow ball with how do you get that money back to the three countries? Obviously, Canada, we care about this. It was China, Mexico, and Canada. This is not the aluminum sector. It's not steel. It's not autos. It is not sectoral. This is the other stuff. And basically, he's got to give it back under law. And they have to apparently they're going to set up committees to decide how that is going to be refunded, in what way. And obviously they want to make it as administratively light as possible. But I think he could just drag that one out. I didn't see any timeline or thing from the Supreme Court, so he could really drag that out.
All right. When we come back, we'll turn our attention to this week in Canadian politics. I mean, another good week for the Liberals, a bad week for the Conservatives, with the Conservatives losing another MP. That's three now who have crossed the floor to join the Liberals. But if you're the Liberals, this is going to be my question to Barry. Do you put your turncoats on display? Because that's what they've been doing. We'll be right back. This is News Radio.
No question goes unasked or unanswered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow returns on News Radio.
Barry McLoughlin with us, President TLC Transformational Leadership Consultants. Well, Poilievre's Conservatives lost another MP this week, Matt Genereux from the Edmonton area. He's the latest to join the Liberals. Political observers will note that the Liberals have not been shy about giving these MPs lots and lots of camera time. Okay. During question period, there's Chris Donchermais sitting right next to the Prime Minister. During question period, there's Michael Maw, another floor crosser, standing up asking the government a question. In committee meetings, they're at news conferences. They're very, very public. very visible. I question this, Bear. I'd like to know what you think, because we have public opinion polling that shows 7 out of 10 Canadians don't really respect floor crossers. They think the vast majority should sit as independents or they should run in by-elections. And so, given the lack of respect for these MPs and their decisions, I just wonder how wise it is to show them off. What do you think?
Actually, it's a very good question. I believe it's inevitably the right thing. Why do I say that? Right thing to do. I mean, I'm opposed to floor crossing either, but that's a generic across country 70%. When you go into the riding, though, and a new Conservative candidate comes forward, yes, he can say, I'm going to be your all the way through, unlike him, the floor crosser. So you can try to make whatever you can of it at the local riding. It rarely pays off on the Nationals, campaign. It gets lost in the, all kinds of waves of things going on. I think giving them the profile, giving them credibility is good for the Liberals, because it shows, he's doing tangible things on your behalf in that riding and tangible things for Canada. So suddenly they go from being nobodies in the backbenches, they're now somebodies. This is pretty good. And don't forget, he's now on the cusp of a majority, which means he has it all lined up. He just has to win these next 3 by-elections, and he is a majority government. He doesn't need any more floor crossers to help him out. So this momentum that he has is really, yes, it is probably post-Devils, post the Conservative leadership, that in the end now it has all, come over to Carney's side of the equation. And he's milking it for all it's worth. So everybody's against it in theory until they're in power and somebody wants to cross over to you. It happened to the Conservatives. The Liberals have done this before. So actually, it's a win for Carney, and it's another sign that Pierre Poilievre is going to have to make some changes in the way he communicates, in the kind of shift they need to make in order to capture some of those lost votes.
All right. Then I'd be curious to know what you think about how Mr. Poilievre handled this week with what he says about floor crossers.
Yeah, he had to kind of, I think try to hold it in and rein it in, rather than gloating. You don't want to be caught gloating. But he gave them all the credibility needed, and, it seemed to work. So I think that I'm not saying it's a thing he should, applaud, but it is something that he was able to show a certain amount of restraint with, give some credibility behind it. And basically, I've talked to a number of minority prime ministers who go, oh man, I got my suitcase packed at the front door every night. Yeah. Because you don't know, right?
But when Mr. Poilievre says, well, they betrayed their constituents, for example, do you think that's the right tone to take?
I think it was a bit harsh. I think he should have been more. I think it should be more in sadness than in anger. It's disappointing that he is not living up to his commitments he made to the people of his riding. Like, he can do it that way without, zooming into that kind of language. That's the old Pierre Poilievre. I think he can get rid of that kind of harshness to it.
All right. We will wrap up our conversation right there for today. You go enjoy the rest of the hockey game, Barry. Thanks for joining us.
I'm looking at it right now. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. That's Barry McLoughlin from TLC, Transformational Leadership Consultants. Tom Korski is coming up next. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Joins us every Friday as well. This is News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now you know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
Well, he's been minding Ottawa's business all week long. Tom Korski's back with us. He's the managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. Welcome back.
Thank you, Rob.
You add it all up, okay? Salary, benefits, pension. Like, what is the average package for an employee in the federal government? What is that number this year?
143,000, Rob, and that includes, as you mentioned, benefits. As you know, there is also a special category of many tens of thousands of employees. It's called executive group, and these are managers. They'll make 140,000 or more just in salaries. It's getting very expensive. How expensive, says the budget office? They did the calculation last year. Federal payroll is $76 billion. That's more than the budgets of some provinces in our country, $76 billion.
So it's 143,271. That's an average. So some might not be earning that much. Salary and benefits, 143 grand. Some maybe earning considerably more. How much has it increased, say, year over year?
Well, it was typically it was 5% on salaries alone, according to the budget office, and 31% increase in the size of the federal payroll over the last 10 years. That's been the big driver. Like they have added over 100,000 federal employees in the last 10 years. These are all budget office figures. This is not opposition figures, trying to drag the chain, upset everybody. Here's some other figures. Everyone likes to talk about money. Here's one. Treasury Board calculated average pension payments for a federal retiree. Very many retirees get out after 25 years or less. That's not uncommon. Average for retirees, over $37,000 a year. There are, of course, very many millions of Canadians in the private sector who have no pension plan outside of mandatory Canada Pension Plan deductions off their checks all those years. The budget office, Rob, has said, you say, how is this possible? The old budget officer, Yves Giroux, once calculated typical federal employee can answer to 7 layers of management. Count them, 7.
Yes. Yeah, 7 layers of management. Annual pension payments average $37,026 per retiree. That's according to a briefing book from the Treasury Board circa 2024. So it might be a little higher by now. I mean, we're in February 2026 now, and it is fully indexed to the rate of inflation. Right?
Oh, absolutely. These are very large costs. So when you put it all together, and the Treasury Board did this only once, they included soldiers, sailors, and aircrew. If you count them as also federal employees and the constable with the RCMP, how much is the Government of Canada payroll? It's $85 billion a year.
Wow, $85 billion. Okay. Let's turn our attention to the Minister of Immigration. Lena Diab, her name, Nova Scotia MP, Halifax area, not getting rave reviews in the job. I've had people on the show who have said, well, the next time the Prime Minister shuffles his cabinet, Lena Diab, a person to watch, okay? Along with the Public Safety Minister, Mr. Ananda Sangari. Not that he would be dropped from cabinet, but maybe not in the best position as Public Safety Minister. But on Lena Diab, what has she said recently about her job?
My job's a piece of cake, because she said in a speech, she said, my job has been made quite easy, quote, end of quote. Why would that be? Because it's now cut. The feds are, if you are an amnesiac and you are unaware of what happened in the last 3 years, this is striking. Cabinet is cutting immigration quotas to beat the band. Now, they let in 393,000 last year. But compared to their original plan that called for 500,000, these are just landed immigrants this year. That's a very dramatic fall. Diab said one interesting thing. This was a speech in the Canadian Club in Toronto. She said, if you have been in Canada for a year, not as a landed immigrant, those are people who fill out the paperwork, follow the rules. If you're, on one of these student visas, or you're a legal immigrant, you're a border crosser, a migrant worker whose permit has expired, if you've been in Canada for 1 year and you decide to file a refugee claim, to hell with that. That is now out. Rob, this is only 2 years since Cabinet was talking about Canada being an open country. They are in full flight from their old immigration policy.
Yeah, but nevertheless, I'm going to talk a little bit about this on Talkback. I mean, you mentioned this figure of 395,000 or so. That landed immigrants, that's permanent. That's the permanent stream, people seeking to be here permanently. But then there are the temporary streams, temporary foreign workers, students, whatnot. I mean, you add it all up, it's somewhere between 700 and 900,000 people are coming to the country every year, Tom.
Oh, there's no question.
Big number. Yeah.
There's no question. But 3 years ago, the temporary permit holders, the students and the migrant workers, that was 1.8 million, plus 400,000 landed immigrants. It was my favorite quote of all time. Then Immigration Minister Mark Miller, he's a winner. A 2024 interview with National Public Radio in the United States. He said this to a foreign audience, to a United States audience. We are an open country. End of quote. Come one, come all. We need population, he said. And we've been paying for it ever since.
All right, we'll be right back. Just getting started with Tom Korski. Lots to talk about this week. He's from Blacklock's Reporter, minding Ottawa's business. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with Tom Korski, managing editor at Blacklock's Reporter. The government made one simple change, and refugee claims made at Canadian airports fell by almost 75%. What was the change?
Isn't that something? It was literally a line change, the stroke of a pen. There was an old rule that said if you were from Mexico on coming to visit Canada as a tourist, you needed a visa. And the Mexican government protested. That was an old conservative Harper rule. And Cabinet 10 years ago got rid of that rule. And refugee claims at airports went through the roof. Well, they brought back the rule just about 18 months ago. They said if you come from Mexico, you want to, as a tourist, air quotes, you want to visit Canada, you get yourself a visa. And when they did that, the refugee claims at airports right across the country, these are federally regulated airports, Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, you name it, fell 73%. How much money is that? The Department of Immigration calculated that simple rule change saved the taxpayers $2/3 of $1 billion a year in chasing bogus refugee claims. Staggering.
Yeah, $660 million. Yeah. Dropped from 40,000 claims to 10,000 in a year. One change.
Incredible.
One as you say, stroke of a pen. You know, Tom, everybody's all wrapped up in the Olympics, of course. This is the radio show that's not the hockey game right now. But I was wondering, I was just doing some searching last night because the CBC is the main rights holder for the Olympic coverage and will be for the foreseeable future. I believe at least the next 3 Olympic Games. And they're doing a fine job. This is not a knock on the CBC. They're sparing no expense with the coverage. I'd love to know how many people are there, but I was just curious, how much did the CBC spend on the rights? How much is it spending to do the broadcasts? Can't find it. It's all secret. In fact, as it turns out, all spending by the CBC is secret and will remain so. Tell us more.
Taxpayers Federation went to federal court. They had a simple request. They'd filed a request under the Access to Information Act, wanted to know what the network, CBC network, was spending on advertising itself, marketing, over 3 years after the pandemic. That's an important timeline because in those years, 2020, 21, 22, 23, they were playing Ned the Poor Houseboy. They were going up to Commons committees, rattling the cup and saying, we are broke, we have a structural deficit, won't you please help? Because they were successfully lobbying for an increase in their parliamentary grant, now $1.6 billion a year. And so the Taxpayers Federation asked a federal judge, let's see, we don't want the details about, which ad firm got which commission, just the global figures. What did they spend on advertising in those specific years? And a federal judge said, drop dead. Under Access to Information, said it would cause breach of commercial confidentiality for the network. But he went on to say, and this was a conservative appointed judge, by the way, he went on to say that it was highly entertaining. He said that if you had disclosed the advertising expenses, I quote the judge accurately, it could result in political interference and pressure to modify CBC spending. End of quote. Yes.
Oh,
yes,
imagine.
exactly.
Imagine that. Imagine if it did that. Oh, my gosh. Heaven forbid. Heaven forbid. All right. Let's move along here. Lots of people are getting government checks and never cashing them. What is going on there?
People are dying or they forget or sometimes it's lost in a filing cabinet somewhere. Last year, more than 1 million government checks were never cashed. And it's big money. The Fed saved over $600 million. Old age security, employment insurance. Remember the famous carbon rebate checks? Very many, millions of them were never cashed. The Feds have always wanted direct deposit, but here they're saving a fortune.
Yeah, they sure are. Some of them are EI payments as well.
Oh, tax refunds, which is almost
tax refunds.
I have difficulty. When have I ever failed to cash a tax refund check. I don't remember doing that, Rob.
Yeah. Isn't that something? And it's big money, as you say. It's big money.
It's huge money.
And as well, there's an administrative cost just for the government to issue a check is, it does cost the government money to issue a check. Is it like $1.35 a check or $1.85 a check?
Absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So,
they're heading up.
So that adds up too.
Postage. Oh, for sure. But there is one neat story, though. I'll keep it short. About 10 years ago, they came up with the idea of making direct deposit mandatory, including tax refunds. And the system failed. You'll never guess why. There was about a quarter of Canadians, a handy 21 to about 30%, who said, no way in hell am I giving the government of Canada my bank account information. And the system collapsed.
Every now and then, if you're a subscriber to Blacklock's Reporter, you'll see guest commentaries. They're just short little guest commentaries, maybe a paragraph, maybe two at the most. I noticed one posted this week from a former MP from the Reform Party Canadian Alliance days from Alberta. I think he might have been from Calgary. Lee Morrison. You would know better than me, Tom, perhaps. He had some great advice for people who might be out campaigning. What were some of his words of advice?
He was an old-time reformer and a true blue reformer, never took a pension, and thought Manning went Hollywood, Preston Manning, when he was leader of the party. He talked about the 93 campaign where they came within 2 seats of crushing the old Progressive Conservative Party, which later disbanded. What did he say? I got into a fight with one voter on his own front porch. It was a hot time, he said. And I learned never to campaign in bars. Alcohol brings out cynicism in the electorate. God bless you, Lee.
Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah. Piece of advice. Don't campaign in bars. I love that.
Gold.
Thank you, Tom Korski. We'll speak next week. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, Tom has been minding Ottawa's business as usual. Thank goodness somebody is. At Blacklock's Reporter, I'm Rob Snow. This is News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
If you're ever looking for a podcast of our show, now you know with Rob Snow, we have the mobile app that will help you hear it when you want to. You can listen live, listen to the podcast. It's called the Seeker app. Seeker spelled S-E-E-K-R. All kinds of exclusive audio that you won't hear anywhere else. News, music, and sports. You can download Seeker for iOS or Android. That's Seeker spelled S-E-E-K-R. And now you know with Rob Snow is on Spotify and Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. And there's some new podcasts out that I would recommend. Brand new, Big Headlines, an offshoot of the Big Story podcast. All your headlines in 5 minutes. Give it a try. Follow it. Rate it if you can. That's also on the Seeker app. And so is a new podcast for fans of the true crime genre. Phil Martino and Madison Fitzpatrick bring you Tracking a Killer, the Cold Case Files. Also on the Seeker app, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Taking a look at financial markets, no big sways one way or the other on the Trump tariff ruling from the Supreme Court of the United States today, which threw out a lot of the Trump tariff policy and said that Trump doesn't have the ability to do that without congressional authority. Almost everything having to do with financial markets has Iran hanging over it, according to most reports, because of the massive American military buildup in that region. It's going to be very interesting to see how things close on Wall Street and Bay Street at 4 o'clock Eastern time for stocks. But given the uncertainty, it's not surprising to see gold getting some bids again. It's back above $5,000 US an ounce, around $50.90 US an ounce right now, but still flat for the week. Oil, and you may have noticed this at the pump, oil has moved higher through the week, above $66 US a barrel now. It's up 6% on the week. Gas prices creeping higher across the country. Any action in Iran could bring the Strait of Hormuz into play. 20% of the world's oil moves through the Strait of Hormuz, so any interruption could cause an increase in the oil price. As for gas prices, I mean, anything around $1.30 a liter for regular these days seems to be you're doing okay if you can get it for that price. In Halifax and across Nova Scotia, prices went up this week. They set the price once a week on Thursdays. The average now $1.37.7, much higher for diesel. Here in the Ottawa area, up as well. We're closer to $1.35. Kitchener around $1.33. Gas prices in Calgary around $1.20, 120.4, but a huge jump in gas prices in Vancouver, where I mean it's already expensive to drive in that city. Gas prices shot up 10 cents a liter this week alone, and like the bottom barrel price that drivers can find these days is $1.82, $1.82 a liter for gas in Vancouver. On the lottery watch, no big winner for the Lotto Max earlier this week. So that jackpot tonight, $60 million and 6 prizes of $1 million each, and no winner of the Lotto 649 Gold Ball jackpot lately. So that's up to $34 million now, along with the traditional jackpot prize of $5 million. That draw is tomorrow. Talkback Friday free for all. Talkback is coming up. You grab a line right now. Tell us what's on your mind. Pick a topic. We will roll with it at 1-833-668-2577. And have your say to end the week on Talkback on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And welcome to the Friday Free-for-All. We don't come up with the topics on Fridays. We always have some topics ready to go. But we always prefer to know what's on your mind. So what's on your mind? What do you want to talk about? If you want to talk about something that's in the news, certainly a lot of news, lots of news this week, lots of big stories. If you want to talk about something that you think should be in the news, you feel free to raise it here, whatever it happens to be. It could be serious. It could be not so serious. We have a phone line for you. All of our phone lines are open right now. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I have a feeling it's kind of a low productivity day in the workplaces of the nation. Big hockey game happening right now. So maybe a lot of people distracted at work, maybe distracted at school. Televisions rolled into classrooms, that kind of thing. But if you're not all wrapped up into hockey, certainly we can talk about the current events of the day. And as always, if you've never called before, just mention that to us and we will make your call a priority. That number again, 1-833-668-2577. I mean, one of the developing news stories today is Trump and tariffs, the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court. I mean, and let's face it, that's a very Trump-friendly court, and Trump is not going to be happy with some of the justices that he appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court today, ruling 6-3 and saying that Donald Trump does not have the authority to impose many of his tariffs, that the president just doesn't have the right to impose those tariffs without the approval of Congress. It's Congress that has taxing authority. Tariffs are taxes. President can't do it alone without the approval of Congress. He didn't get that, so it's not allowed. I mean, it's the Supreme Court of the United States. So what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen? Is he just going to, defy the Supreme Court of the United States? I mean, it sounds on the surface like it's good news for Canada. We're certainly monitoring for any reaction we get from political leaders here, but they're probably all watching the hockey game too. It's being reported that the sectoral tariffs that have been so hard on Canada, steel, aluminum, the auto sector, lumber, they aren't affected by this court decision. And they'll remain in place. The Associated Press is reporting, can Trump still impose tariffs? Quoting here, yes, but not under the fast-acting law that he previously used. Top administration officials have said they expect to keep the tariff framework in place under other authorities, though alternative laws carry greater limitations on the speed and severity of the president's actions. That's what the Associated Press is saying in early reaction. But we can always talk about Trump. Everybody always has an opinion on Trump now that the Supreme Court of the United States has said his main tariff policy is illegal. What do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to do? That's a big story today. Another big story is Andrew, right? Andrew. What do you think is going to happen here? Andrew, Mountbatten, Windsor. What do you think about that story? I mean, shocking to see what is unfolding here. What do you see happening? It's been all over the news, you know, nobody is above the law. Nobody is above the law. But do you think that's true? Is that true when it comes to the Epstein files, that nobody is above the law? Nobody is above the law. Does that include a member of the royal family? Are they going to put Andrew on trial? If he's convicted, is the brother of King Charles going to go to prison? Do you really foresee that ever happening? You know, another angle of that whole story, the Epstein files, is they seem to be taking it a lot more seriously in the UK. I mean, in the UK, you have highly influential people facing a reckoning over the Epstein files. But that really hasn't been the case in the United States. I mean, is Ghislaine Maxwell going to be the only person who goes to prison over ties to Jeffrey Epstein? I haven't really talked too much about the Epstein files here on Talkback, but that was a huge story this week. And you know the way the UK tabloid media is. It is going to have a field day with that story. As well, what do you think about what the Premier of Alberta said yesterday? Albertans are going to the polls in a referendum in October that is going to have a lot to do with immigration. They're going to be asked if Alberta should have more control over immigration. They're going to be asked questions like if people who aren't citizens or permanent residents, whether they should have to pay to access social programs like healthcare or education. Now, other provinces have long envied that Quebec has so much more control over its own immigration system. And I don't think the Premier of Alberta is any different, nor many other premiers. But her government is being accused of being a racist government, of being anti-immigrant, of scapegoating immigrants. You agree with that? That this is scapegoating immigrants for a government's mismanagement on issues like healthcare and education? 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. Those are just three ideas that we're tossing out there. Merely consider them conversation starters. If there's anything that happens to be on your mind, maybe on somebody else's mind as well. Let's get the conversation going and get into the weekend. It's the Friday free-for-all Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, that's it for the hockey game. Canada moves on to the gold medal game in ice hockey, men's ice hockey. 3-2 win over Finland just moments ago. Gutsy win for Team Canada, falling behind 2-0 early, then clawing their way back. Nathan McKinnon with the game-winning goal as Finland took a penalty late in the game, and Nathan McKinnon scoring on the power play. So that's over. Big hockey game's over, and it's the U.S. and Slovakia in the other semifinal, and on the line, the final berth in the gold medal game, which goes Sunday morning. So that's it. Pretty solid win. It's been nerve-wracking, though, hasn't it? That game yesterday with the women that went to overtime, just heartbreak for the Canadian women against their American rivals. But Canada moves on to the gold medal game in hockey, and everything is right with the world. 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. It's the Friday free-for-all talkback. Let's get to Hickey in Calgary. Hi, Hickey. Good to hear from you, Hickey.
Hey, I just wanted to say, talking about Matt Generud crossing the floor and then
Yes.
Eby calling, the separatist traitors because a bunch of them went down to the U.S. because we need to get our oil to the ocean. Because even the Liberal trade minister said, India's going to take as much oil as we can get to the ocean. But he gets mad at us and calls us traitors because we're trying to figure out how to get it there. I just think that there couldn't be more things going on right now in and around Alberta that's causing everybody to get out there and want to sign the petition. And I don't think the petition truly is to leave Alberta or Canada. I think it's just so the federal government starts listening to us. But, I don't know what else could happen that wouldn't drive more people to go sign this and stand up for Alberta's rights, because it just feels like every time we turn around, we're getting slapped by somebody.
Okay. Give me an example of what you mean. I mean, you mentioned, Premier Eby, but what else are you talking about? You say there are a lot of things going on that are driving people, into the arms of the separatists. Well, what else is going on?
Well, just essentially, if you look at, when we have a conservative in our province that's moving over to the Liberals, there's no by-election being held. It really feels like there's, interesting back deals going on. We have the Liberal trade minister telling us that India wants every single bit of LNG and oil that we can get, yet, there's no programs for us to get it there because BC is absolutely stopping it. And it's frustrating because, all we want to do is have our own fair share. If we told David Eby he can't get any of his, softwood across any part of Canada, or we told Quebec, they couldn't sell their power anymore, they would be up in arms and screaming and yelling and, creating a hissy fit, and it's the fact that we're just trying to do the best that we can do to keep going and to make it work. And every time we try and do something, it seems like we're getting pushed down by the federal government and by the other premiers. And it's really frustrating for a lot of people that are here. A lot of people think the separatists are young, 18 or 20-year-olds. Most of the people at these meetings are over the age of 50 or 60, and they're just done paying taxes and have it squandered away.
Well, what about the MOU, though? I mean, the premier was all smiles when she met with Prime Minister Carney and signed that MOU, and does that not smooth things over at all, or give you any confidence whatsoever that things are moving along, and that there is a concerted? And I'm not here to defend the Liberals in Ottawa, but do you not get any sense at all that Prime Minister Carney is not like Prime Minister Trudeau when it comes to dealing with Alberta and its grievances?
I think that, we as a country need to start exporting our energy quickly. And a good example is, Stephen or Mr. Moe putting, saying, yeah, we'll build a $1 billion plant down off the coast of Washington to get our fertilizer out because we can't even work with, Eby. When you think about the MOU, there's parts of it that make a lot of sense. But, if I said, hey, you're going to win the lottery, unless, somebody says, hey, even though those numbers all matched, we're not going to pay out, which is pretty much what the Prime Minister said. There's so many hoops that we're going to have to jump through that a lot of it doesn't make sense.
All right. Good to hear from you, Hickey. Thank you for your call. Just like that. Off and running. Friday free-for-all talkback. 1-833-668-2577. You never know where the conversation is going to go, but we're starting with someone in Alberta who just doesn't think Confederation is working anymore. Have your say on any topic. We will hear you out. We will follow along. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Let's go to Penny in Calgary on the Friday Free for All Talkback. Hi, Penny.
Hi, how are you doing today?
Yeah, very good, Penny.
I'm
Thank
sure.
you.
I hope you can be patient with me for a couple of minutes. This is a bit of a long story, but on June 13th, my 50th wedding anniversary, my husband went into the Rocky View with a bowel obstruction. He sat in ICU from 1 in the morning until 4 in the afternoon when somebody finally assessed him and then decided this was emergency surgery. It gave me the gears because I didn't get him there soon enough. And he's now been in the hospital for 8 months. It was 8 months on the 13th of February. He was unconscious in ICU for 3 weeks, and then he spent 2 more weeks in ICU. He lost all muscle control in his body. He had many other issues, which they cleared up. He wasn't sick before he went in. He was 235 pounds and he's 6'2", and now he weighs 170 pounds. And he's supposed to come home soon, but they keep putting it off to make sure that he's doing well. But during the time that he was first in there, nobody would really talk to me about what had gone on during the surgery, and I'm still kind of in the dark, but it sounds like they did not do their due diligence about pumping his stomach, and he aspirated on the contents of his bowel, and they took about 6 liters of fecal matter out of his lungs. And it didn't seem to be a big deal to anybody. And I got to say, we're seniors, so we don't have a lot of life left. And they didn't seem to consider that they needed to be more careful because we're older and we want the life that we still have left, of course. He's supposed to be coming home this week. I hope that happens. I don't want to sue anybody, but I would like an apology from Alberta Healthcare.
Okay, Penny. Thank you for your call. I really hope your husband is on the mend and feels better and doesn't have a repeat of that circumstance. I'm astonished by the wait. I guess I shouldn't be astonished anymore by a wait like that. You get at the hospital at 1 o'clock in the morning. Nobody sees you until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're told, well, why didn't you bring him here sooner? Well, what difference would it have made? Yes, we were here for 13 hours waiting until somebody saw us. Such a familiar story. Lane in Calgary up next on Talkback. Lane. Hi, Lane.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Yeah, very good.
Can you hear me okay?
What's on your mind? Hear you just fine.
Excellent. I'd like to talk about the lack of critical thinking in the whole entire idea of separatism in Alberta.
All right.
It's totally mind-boggling to me the number of people that hear the idea of... sorry, I got a little distracted there for a second. But hear the idea of transfer payments, equalization payments, and think that it's unfair. The reality is they're there to help the average Canadian have a common standard of living based on the resources of Canada. And it's not that it's unfair that we don't get as much back, because most of us have a better standard of living than many places in Canada. But aside from that, the reality is they don't seem to be thinking about anything else that goes along with separatism. My understanding is that we only have oil rights in Alberta if we stay part of Canada. I believe that was part of the original deal. So if we left,
I'm not sure about that. Look, if you want to think critically, I'm all for that, but we do also have to bring on the news. I will bring you back if you're willing to hang on the line. I would like to explore this a little bit more with you, because it sounds as though you might be in the minority opinion when it comes to the current viewpoint of Confederation and how it's working. So I'll be more than happy to bring you back on if you just want to hang on the line, but we will have to stop here. I want to give you more time to explain what you mean and what your position is. 1-833-668-2577, folks. Hockey game's over. can talk about the hockey game. We can talk about the Olympics. We can talk about the hard news, the soft news, no news at all. 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, it sure is. Friday free for all Talkback. So we're open line, open topic today. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll follow your lead. Lane has been kind enough to hang on the line. Speaking favorably from Alberta about equalization. I mean, that's a rarity, Lane. That's a rarity.
Well, I'm a Canadian first. I've been a Canadian for over 60 years, and I'm not going to change that just because somebody starts squawking about how unfair it is that the country uses some of our proceeds from some of our resources to help other parts of the country. But the bottom line is, separatism is not even practical. As far as I understand it, our oil rights were only ceded to Alberta under the condition that we stayed part of Canada. I'd have to have that double checked, of course, but that's my understanding of it. In addition, I believe we have to have a certain percentage of the country vote to agree to allow us to separate. So it's not something we could do unilaterally. Nobody talks about what would happen to banking. Nobody talks about our currency. Nobody talks about military, how we would get things in and out of a landlocked country. Transportation rights to get our product shipped anywhere. Daniel Smith talks about one little thing, and people are jumping on board, and people just aren't thinking about the other possibilities and the other problems. And she's certainly not mentioning it. And I feel like she knows perfectly well it's not feasible. She's prolonging the referendum until next fall in order to gather about 170,000 signatures to vote for separatism when they've already got over 400,000 signatures petitioning to stay in Canada, and she knows that. She knows that a million people in Alberta have claimed that they would leave the province if we separated. So it's pretty much a smokescreen. It sort of makes me wonder what exactly she's up to, and it makes me think that it's primarily just a distraction.
What do you think she's up to? What do you think she's up to? What do you think she's up to?
I think she's trying to distract from her two-tier health care. Two-tier health care, she talks about it like it's going to solve all the problems of health care in Alberta. But all it's really going to do is allow the better people to move out of the system that most of us have access to, which is public health care, into private care where we can't afford to use them, meaning we're going to have less people available in public health care to provide our service and less qualified people. And somehow that's supposed to be better for the average Albertan? I will say,
I mean, I don't know. A lot of people are at their wits' end with the state of the public healthcare system right now. There wouldn't be this propagation of, fee-for-service clinics, and that's just not happening in Alberta. I mean, that's happening all across the province, where you have fee-for-service clinics now. Those, those wouldn't be propagating the way they are if there wasn't a demand for that kind of service. I mean, people are clearly willing to pay their own money to have their own healthcare choices.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the majority of people can't afford to pay for what's serious. And it's not a benefit to the average person to have that option. It's a benefit for rich people and people who can afford it, which is not the majority of people. Either way, it makes me wonder.
Because Premier Smith insists she's not a separatist. That what she wants is an Alberta within a united Canada, a stronger Alberta within a united Canada. To me, she's using just a lot of the same tactics that Quebec has used for decades to apply pressure to Ottawa for better conditions within the Federation, which I don't think is unprecedented.
No, I'm not going to argue with that idea, but the problem is the minute you create a situation where you're potentially in an unstable atmosphere, you start to affect the economy because of investment. Companies aren't necessarily in a hurry to come to a province that's talking about separating, if there's any possibility of that. And even if it harms us in a small way, it's not beneficial. I feel like there's a whole lot of games being played And I don't think people are really thinking the consequences through of a lot of these things. I think a lot of people voting for separatism are on a knee-jerk reaction going, oh, there's something bad here. I think if we separated, it'd be better. But they're not thinking about what would actually happen and whether it really would be better. I'm not telling you that I think everything is great, especially in our healthcare system, or that everything is wonderful in the way the governments are operating federally. I'm simply saying I don't think anything is as cut and dried as she's making it sound. And I think she's wasting a lot of taxpayer time and money pushing an agenda that is not actually going to benefit us in the long run. And I don't appreciate the idea of trying to claim that we should stand alone and better all of ourselves, but ignore all of the rest of Canada. I don't agree with that.
Sure. Yeah. And really right now it would seem that, the majority would agree with you, because whenever they do polling, what is it? It maybe 30%. And when you dig deeper and you ask the specific questions that you're asking, support drops even further. And she says she's she hasn't signed this petition and whatnot. I don't know what more you want from the premier, but you think she's too cozy. You're cozying up to the separatists. They're making it easier for them to advance their agenda. I can appreciate
she's the one
that.
who brought it up in the first place.
All right. Well, she did make it easier for this to be put to the voters. She lowered the threshold and made it easier for this issue to be advanced. 1-833-668-2577. Let's stop here and we'll be right back. Maybe somebody wants to offer a counterpoint to that. Or go off in a different direction. That's what we do on Fridays. Friday Free For All Talkback here on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Friday Free For All Talkback. Open line, open topic today. Jonathan in Nova Scotia. Hello, Jonathan. You're on the line.
Hello, how's it going? Hello.
Yeah, very good, Jonathan. Good to hear from you. What's on your mind today?
I wanted to switch topic just a little bit. I wanted just to vent, I guess, a little bit about the ongoing F-35 review.
Sure.
And basically, I just think it's ridiculous that they haven't, come out with the decision yet. It seems like to go with the Gripen fighter from Sweden, it seems like such a clear-cut, easy win for Canada. And it just blows my mind how they haven't made a decision on that yet.
Okay. You say that you think the Swedish plane would be the better option for Canada. You're saying the Saab plane, right?
Yeah.
Why?
100%.
Why?
Well, aside from the kill switch, if you will, which I know isn't necessarily a button they push, but they'd be in control of all the software updates, all the maintenance. And when a country comes out, whether you believe Trump or not, and says, we want to annex you economically or otherwise, I just don't see why would you ever buy a fighter jet from a country that has basically come out and said, well, we might take you over. It just seems ludicrous. And I can understand, of course they're going to want Canada to stick for the F-35, to support Boeing and that. But, if you're a country looking to take over another one, of course you're going to want them to buy your jet so that you get free jets when you get your country.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. But I mean, it's been all over the news media when they interview defense experts, when they interview the brass in the Canadian forces, in the Air Force, that the F-35 is a superior airplane. Shouldn't we have our pilots flying the superior airplane?
It's superior depending on what situation it's in. The Gripen's more maneuverable. It's a faster fighter. One-on-one on an F-35, it might not lose, but I read an article recently, and I'm just trying to do some more fact-checking on it, but it was about an exercise that it was two F-35s versus a Gripen fighter, and the Gripen actually took out both the F-35s because the pilot knew the terrain and was very experienced, and it just goes to show that, sure, it might be a better fighter or a better plane on paper, but a lot of it comes down to how it's used. And, having a full complement of F-35s, I mean, that's much more of an offensive aircraft. And I don't see Canada sending 88 F-35s to support a conflict somewhere. It's looking more realistic these days that we'll be in more of a defensive fight, in which place the F-35 would be, the Gripen would be a much better option, in my opinion.
Yeah, as well that there are Canadian companies who are involved in the F-35 supply chain right now, right? That every F-35 that it goes into production is like millions of dollars worth of Canadian parts in the F-35.
But then
supporting companies here in Canada, supporting jobs here in Canada.
But you could say, I mean, if Sweden actually went through and you built the factory, brought manufacturing, and there's over 10,000 jobs. So there's that alone, but then there'd be other jobs that would be, coming from that in itself. We'd have to support, that whole industry as well. And it's not to say, I think we should have some of the F-35s. I understand we already pay for some, but I think the mixed fleet is really the way to go. We'd have more planes. It would cost us less. We'd have more control. Anyway, that's my rant. Thank you.
Fair enough. Thank you. I'd like them to buy some darn planes. I mean, we pledged to join the F-35 program in 1997, sir. 1997. I don't even think Curtis was born in 1997, my producer. Right? The Harper government in 2010 announced we buy 65 of them. Lots of backlash. Liberals get elected in 2015. Oh, they were canceling the program. And then they hummed and hawed for a few more years. And then 2023 comes along, and then the F-35 is just fine. And the government announces we'll buy 88 of them. Instead of 66, we'll actually buy more of them. Bam, new election, everything's under review. And, meantime, our pilots are still flying CF-18s that were, many of them delivered in the 1980s. Like, anybody have a car in their driveway? Well, some of you would. Are they your daily driver, a car that was built in the 1980s? 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. Better stop here, and then we'll go to High River and Cole Harbour and Calgary on Talkback on a Friday on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
To High River, Alberta, we go. Chantel is on the line. Hi, Chantel. What's on your mind?
Hi, Rob. I'm calling about the referendum. I lived in Quebec for 35 years, and I've been through referendums, and they don't do any good. People don't realize it's not just what you lose, but you lose a lot. We had a lot of factories that just moved away because they didn't want nothing to do with referendum. So it affects the economy, it affects people's lives for jobs, and there's a lot more to it. I had to vote about 3 times in referendum, and each time it wasn't good. And every time it just got worse, and they keep repeating, but you don't get ahead. So I don't even know why they bother, because it's not good.
All right. Well, it seems inevitable now. I mean, you're going to have a referendum on lots of immigration-related questions one way or the other. Maybe you'll have more than one Maybe you'll have more than one referendum. What do they call that? A referenda this year in Alberta. Maybe you'll have one on independence and one about immigration and healthcare as well, and a whole other series of constitutional questions.
Yeah,
but you're right, though. It's about the uncertainty that it creates. I think people are finally kind of cluing into this now. I don't know why. I mean, I raised this, not that anybody is ever listening to me, but I raised this so many months ago. It must be more than a year ago. I raised this. Did anybody not learn from what happened to Quebec when they first started doing this, right? In the 1970s, when the PQ first came to power, and what happened? To the province of Quebec after that, and all the uncertainty after René Lévesque won in 1976. Like in 1976, Toronto and Montreal, they were economically, they were about the same. Okay, but after 76, it was never the same. Toronto exploded, and Montreal went into this period of stagnation. You had hundreds of companies left Quebec.
Oh, yeah.
Because of that.
Oh, yeah.
And they relocated to other parts of Canada because there was too much uncertainty. Like the Royal Bank left Montreal. They all had their headquarters. Yeah. Sun Life. The Bank of Montreal is not headquartered in Montreal. It's headquartered in Toronto. And you also had the exodus because of Bill 101. 600,000 people left the province of Quebec. Imagine the brain drain because all the talent that left that province because it was just a culturally hostile government, all the economic uncertainty. Are you going to have a repeat of that in Alberta? I don't know.
I hope not. I certainly hope not. I hope people are smart enough to look at just everything you just said there and realize that it's not just simple voting, it's done. It affects a lot of things and a lot of people.
Sure. And it'd be nice if some of these big businesses, you have a lot of corporate headquarters in Calgary, CP Rail, Canadian Pacific, CNQ, TC Energy, Enbridge. What do these people think about the uncertainty that this creates in their province?
I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
and I just have one more thing to mention
ma'am.
About all the medication that they destroyed this week that didn't get into our pharmacies and expired. Why don't they take something like that when there's only like a year or 6 months left and give it to pharmacies that can give it to people that can't afford that kind of stuff instead of spending $700,000 to destroy it?
Fair point. Maybe there are regulations around that I'm not familiar with, but I appreciate your sentiment, and we'll have to wrap up our conversation there, Chantel. And that's it for hour number one. But if you are on the line, just hang on the line. We're going to bring you right up to date on all the latest breaking news today. Big developing story today on Trump and tariffs and the U.S. Supreme Court that we'll tell you all about. Heart-stopping game for the men in the Olympics. Tell you about that as well. And then right back to your phone calls on the Friday Free For All Talkback here on News Radio.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the Friday Free For All Talkback. We are open line, open topic on Fridays. Whatever happens to be on your mind, we will hear you out and follow your lead. Let's go to Calgary again. Peter's there. Hi, Peter.
Hey, good day. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, Peter. What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, just so you know, a lot of people listen to you. I wouldn't get too upset about, what you said a year ago.
No, it's just you try to press these points on people and, it just seems to get lost in the noise sometimes. So it can be frustrating. But I do appreciate your call. I appreciate the sentiment, Peter. So what are you thinking about
I got a couple
today?
of comments. The first one is on the aircraft. So I don't know if there are enough people here that remember what happened in some of the previous conflicts with our aged fighter craft. We've got pilots that are trained to do it. They just don't have the equipment to carry out. And case in point would be the fact that when I think it was the Iran thing when they were, was it Iran? No. Anyhow, they relegated the Canadians to like the cleanup duty, right? The actual fighting was done by the U.S. and some of the other people that have got modern aircraft where they can communicate to each other and know what's exactly going on, whereas the Canadians were left out to do whatever. So that point, we need something to keep up with the military, and I think the F-35s is the way to go. Like you said, we've been at it a real long time, and it's time to do something about it and get our poop in a group and get moving.
Yeah. Plus, the CF-18s, we first took delivery of the CF-18s in 1982, sir. Like 1982.
Yeah.
Like, come on. Like,
they're a cool airplane,
how many governments are going to come and go before we get a new airplane in the air?
Exactly.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, I agree. We got to get our poop in a group. And, well, to Mark Carney's thing the other day about spending all this money on defense, I hope he does it. At least, stick to your word and do it because we're sorely lacking. So that's for sure. When you go look a couple of years ago, Canada bought a couple of used submarines. I don't think those things are even in active duty anymore. They were more or less out of commission before they got here. I know the one had.
And what happened there? What do we do there? You know, there's an old line, the cheap man pays twice, right?
Yeah,
and the submarines that we bought for the Royal Canadian Navy, they've had all sorts of problems. The dud subs, they were called the dud subs. We bought them used from the UK. All sorts of problems from engine, propulsion systems, sonar, the onboard electronics. The Chicoutimi suffered a severe onboard fire in 2004. People were severely injured. And I mean, even with upgrades, these submarines are mostly using technology from the 1990s. So do you have a computer on your desk that was built in the 1990s?
Yeah.
You have a Commodore there?
Exactly.
Are you using a Commodore? Right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyhow, that's my point on the aircraft. It's the other guy that called from, I don't know where, about the healthcare in Alberta. Well, I hate to be a bearer of bad news. We already got a hybrid system in place where it's a two-tier system. It's got nothing to do with about whether you can pay or not. We got like some of the best eye surgeons in the country here. They still charge AAS, but it's a private clinic. You go in there and get your eyes fixed, and you don't have to go through the regular routine. In fact, when I had my retinal tear, I went to the local hospital here, and they referred me to these guys because they're the specialists. They got all the cool equipment. He says, we can't help you. You best just to go there. So the old way of doing things just doesn't work. So we got to figure out a new way, and the best way to do it is let the doctors decide what they want to do, whether they want to go into the hybrid system or they go into the other deal. And as far as paying for services, we know people, yeah, they paid, but they went out of country. They didn't get it fixed here. The people that we know that get their hips and knees fixed here go through the old system, and they wait a year and a half. And, off you go.
Understood. All right. Thank you for your call today. I appreciate your call. We have phone lines available there, 1-833-668-2577. If the Prime Minister, there are big plans to spend a lot of money on new equipment, whether it's fighter jets eventually, submarines, a lot of action happening in the procurement of submarines right now with this German-Norwegian consortium that wants to build submarines, and South Korea lobbying hard for submarines, and the government trying to tie it to maybe more auto production in Ontario, given the problems there. But if Mr. Carney could just figure out one more thing, is procurement. Governments come, governments go. We've seen governments come up with plans to buy new equipment, and then the government loses an election, and other governments come along, they have other priorities. Some of you may be of a certain vintage. You might remember the project to replace the Sea Kings back in the 1990s with EH-101s. Right? Change in government. That cost the government $500 million in penalties in the late 90s. $500 million. It was a lot of money in the 1990s, and it's a lot of money right now. Those Sea Kings were still flying, well into the 2000s. Some of you may remember the project for a new supply ship for the Royal Canadian Navy. When the Liberals first came to power in 2015, they messed around with that project. It was a Harper government project for a much-needed supply ship for the Navy. And in the process, tried to sink the career of a very honorable man by the name of Mark Norman, Vice Admiral of the Navy, Mark Norman. They tried to railroad that guy. Canadian Surface Combatant Program for Halifax. That's supposed to build 15 warships. Original budget, $26 billion. Latest estimate, $84 billion. As of 4 years ago, taxpayers had spent in excess of $800 million. No ship yet. First ship was supposed to be delivered in 2015. Could take another 4 years. We're talking about a project that was first announced in 2014. A dozen years ago. 16 years to build one ship. 16 years. During the Second World War, we had shipyards in this country, built 4,000 vessels for the Allies. Some of them were finished in 60 days. Now it takes 12 years. So I wish the Carney government well, but announcing you're going to buy new equipment is one thing. It's in the doing, the taking delivery of it, on time, on budget. that has proven to have been elusive for multiple governments. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Going back to Nova Scotia, I believe Eric is in Cole Harbour. Hello, Eric.
Hi, Rob. How you doing?
Let me ask you, I'm good. Let me ask you a question, Eric. Let me ask you a question. Okay, you're there in Cole Harbour. All right, home of Sidney Crosby, home of Nathan McKinnon, who scored the game-winning goal today for Canada to advance to the gold medal in the men's hockey in the Olympics. Now, when Nathan McKinnon scores a big goal like that, do fireworks go off in Cole Harbour? Do they shoot a cannon or anything like that? Do you hear anything like that in Cole Harbour?
Well, they do in the local pub where they're watching the game. But I can't make any promises about tonight.
Now, it's good to hear from you. What's on your mind?
Well, you know, what I find interesting, Rob, what I want to talk about is a lot of people are talking about premiers, and here's what we face in Nova Scotia. As you're aware, the rents in Nova Scotia are very high, especially in HRM. And the premier was on your sister station, 95.7 here in Halifax the other day, and he was asked if the rent cap was going to be taken off after 2027. He said yes. And then he said, well, it doesn't really matter if it's on or it's off, because when people move out, the landlords are going to jack up the rent, which they do probably by $200 or $300, maybe $400. So I found that rather callous, because anybody, the average wage in Nova Scotia is maybe around $33,000 or $34,000. And if anybody's got a rent that they can still buy groceries with afterwards, making that kind of money, then they're not going to move. The second thing he said, well, you know, there's 13,000 more apartments coming online. Yeah, well, the average rent there is probably going to be about $2,500 a month. And then he said, well, you know, we're getting a 3% discount. That'll buy you about $16 a month, $16 a week rather. Probably buy you 2 items in the grocery store now. The other thing that he said, and this really irritated me a lot, he's been going after the native people to stop selling cannabis on the reservations, claiming.
Yes.
Right. Now, here's the thing. The cannabis they sell, regardless whether it's on a reservation, we'll say, or the liquor store, it's at almost 15 to 20% psychoactive percentages of THC. It, as you know, you've had people on your show, and other people have been interviewed on your sister station down here, psychologists, and if a person's brain isn't developed, then they're going to have all kinds of problems psychologically, and a lot of psychologists are very worried about this. So he relates, well, we want to make cannabis give us the same profit as booze. You know what I mean? I've really had enough of this guy. He's got 2,000 people living on the street, right? And he talks about affordable housing. Well, Rob, you got to be able to have a salary in order to afford anything. And, you know, in Halifax, the last thing I say, they're spending $100 million, between $80 and $100 million in bike lanes. Imagine if they took $60 million of that and opened up the trade schools so the people that are on the street could learn trades and then become a productive member of society. And plus the fact that out of that 2,000, it's about 29%, so the experts say, are people that are unfortunately suffer from addictions. The other people are working, but they're only working for maybe 20 or 25,000 a year, and they can't afford a rent. So when you hear a premier say things like that, is he in touch with reality, I wonder?
I understand what you're saying. I can appreciate the premier's point of view. He is saying, look, this cannabis is being sold on the reserves is illegal. The only place you're allowed to sell pot in Nova Scotia is through the Nova Scotia Liquor Commission at the government stores, right? So what they're doing is illegal. Yeah, it's illegal. But just to me, I guess if I stopped 100 people, you know, on Barrington Street or something in Halifax and asked them, what's the biggest problem right now? What would they say? Some of them might say traffic. Some of them might say, as you say, housing affordability. Others might say just overall affordability. Why is gas back to almost $1.40 a liter? Stuff like this. How many of them would really say all those pot shops on the reserve? None.
I don't think very
would
many.
Be my guess. It's a solution in search of a problem. And a lot of his claims about organized crime, human trafficking, pot laced with fentanyl, this kind of stuff. Where has there been any proof of any of that?
Not as far as I know. The last thing I just want to say, and I agree with you 100% in what you're saying, and it's true what you say. Nobody's worrying about that at all. And then, as you know, Nova Scotia Power down here is under controversy. And
Yes.
he wants to start this windmill farm out in the middle of the ocean. We had an engineer on from Dalhousie University. He says it's not a good idea. And he was saying 60 megawatts, whatever it is. And actually, the experts are coming out and saying it's only 16. And he wants to tax us in order to go through with this project. It was going to take about 30 years or 25 or 30 years. I don't think there's any sense of reality. People can't afford food. They can't afford rent.
Well,
They
plus
can't
there was
afford
another
power.
report that came out, and we'll have to wrap up our conversation there. There's another report that came out that said it only makes economic sense if you export most of the power, right? If you're just using it to power Nova Scotia, it makes no economic sense whatsoever. The price tag of it is $60 billion. If you can sell it to the New England states, then it makes more economic sense. But there's no agreement in place to export a lot of that power. And I wonder how Hydro-Quebec would feel about that, because Hydro-Quebec is more or less the exclusive provider right now of Canadian electricity to the New England states. Stay tuned on that one. Thank you, Eric. You're paying attention. It's Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Zach is in Calgary. Zach up next on the Friday Free For All. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Rob. How are you today, sir?
Very good, Zach. Thank you so much for calling. What's on your mind?
I wanted to talk about a bit of a heavier topic you had this week on MAID, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. What about it?
Well, to answer your question, and I think it needs to be totally abolished. It's not compassionate, and it's predictably gone far beyond what the government promised it would be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think that's going to happen. I think the genie's out of the bottle on that one. I appreciate the sentiment. Why do you think it needs to be totally abolished?
Well, in my opinion, compassion by definition, I think, means to suffer with, not to eliminate the sufferer. I think proposing death as a solution, in my opinion, is the ultimate act of abandonment as a nation. And it kind of leads into my next point. Like, in so many cases, we've heard how the quote-unquote right to die, it turns almost into a duty to die. Once assisted suicide becomes an option, the choice isn't free for a lot of people because, the vulnerable people, they feel a social and financial pressure to get out of the way, to avoid being a burden. And it really, in my opinion, is the ultimate betrayal of the weakest in our society. I'm so grateful that this wasn't an option for me. When I was in a really dark period of chronic physical pain and sadness when I had my broken back. And In Canada, I don't know, I just want to know your opinion on this, but sometimes I feel like we have stricter, like on a personal level, we have stricter ethical protections for dogs than human beings. Like if a vet kills a healthy dog just because the owner is tired of the dog, seems sad. How would you feel about that?
Okay. Where does the issue of free will come into your line of thinking there?
Well, I think when you're in, it's similar to addiction. I think your free will is in a way compromised. when you're in the throes of either, an addiction or physical pain. You can make a free choice when you're lucid, but when you're in a painful circumstance, it does compromise your free will, I think. And we used to understand that, which is why we had a lot of protections around people who were addicted.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know, Zach. I don't think I totally share. I appreciate your point of view, but I don't totally share it right now. I am concerned that the MAID regime is going beyond what it was intended to do. Especially when we're starting to explore things like this looming deadline of only people who suffer from mental illness. I don't like the fact that people are seeking out MAID because they're living in poor social circumstances and could use better social benefits. But still, if someone is at the end stages of life, their death is reasonably foreseeable, and they're in excruciating pain, who are we to say?
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Yeah, while we wait for some calls, 1-833-668-2577. I do want to talk about Premier Smith in Alberta and her speech yesterday and the revelation that there will be a referendum in October. 9 questions. Some of them are related to the Canadian Constitution, the state of federalism, but also immigration and more control over immigration. Getting a lot of pushback today. Some of the headlines: Danielle Smith in the hot seat over Alberta immigration referendum. A clear crackdown on immigrants. Critics push back on Smith's province-wide address. And on it goes in that vein. The Hamilton Spectator, for example, Alberta's Smith blaming immigrants for her own failures, says opposition NDP. And the top columnist for the National Observer today calls her government a fascist government. Fascist, right? So facing a lot of heat for her speech yesterday, where she said that the immigration system is out of control and that she wants Alberta to have more control over its own immigration. I listened to the speech, and in fact, she didn't really focus at all on social cohesion or social values or anything like that. I thought the speech was actually rather boilerplate and really nothing we haven't heard from other political leaders before. Even recently, current political leaders, some of whom in no way are on the same political spectrum as the Alberta Premier. Her emphasis, I thought, in my own opinion, was about the social capacity of the country to deal with such large numbers of newcomers. And I think that is hardly controversial. To me, it's hardly controversial to suggest that the immigration policies of a country be aligned with that country's ability to house people, provide people with health care, and provide people with public education. What is so controversial about that? Other politicians have been saying that. Even politicians who would consider themselves and label themselves to be progressive, if not far out on the political left. And it's certainly par for the course for what you hear if you live where I live in the province of Quebec. And I think what the Premier of Alberta is after, I think the end game is, because she has told me as much the 3 times I've interviewed her over the last couple of years, I think what Premier Smith is after is the same sort of power for Alberta that Quebec has over its own immigration. Of course, in Quebec, it's all wrapped up in these existential issues of language and culture. The Quebec government does not consider its province to be multicultural. It never has. Quebec is Quebecois, and the language is French. And the political leaders are quite unapologetic about it. The culture is Quebec culture. The language is French, and we'll move heaven and earth to protect both. And yet, when these sentiments are expressed by leading Quebec political figures, they barely cause a ripple in the national conversation, whereas Premier Smith and her government are called a bunch of fascists and are accused of scapegoating immigrants. A few years ago, when Premier Legault was still popular in Quebec, he was very concerned and remains very concerned about what's been happening in Montreal, for example. Montreal is becoming less and less French every year, he said. And he wants French to be the majority language in Montreal. Says it's important to the future of Quebec. And to that end, a few years ago, he announced very strict requirements for economic immigrants coming to Quebec, saying they would have to have some fluency in French before they would be allowed to enter Quebec. This is what he said at the time. Roll clip 1.
Because unfortunately, since many years now, we see year after year the percentage of Francophones in Quebec decreasing. In fact, on the island of Montreal, we're now at 48% of Francophones at home. So I think if we want to make sure long-term that we still speak French in Quebec, it's important that we stop this decrease and start seeing an increase in the percentage of Francophones.
And nobody kicked up a fuss about that. He wasn't called a fascist. I can tell as someone who covered that story at the time, Premier Legault faced absolutely no pushback from anyone in the Liberal government in Ottawa about what he planned to do on language requirements in Quebec. Now, as well, some of you might remember the whole issue of Roxham Road, the irregular border crossing between Hemingford, Quebec, and upstate New York, and what a hot political potato that was at the time. The Quebec politicians played the Liberals in Ottawa like a fiddle on that one. And what did Prime Minister Trudeau finally do to make that political problem go away? He handed the government of Quebec a big fat check worth $750 million. $750 million. And you know what Premier Legault said? Yeah, that's a good start. Play clip 2.
You are a little bit satisfied, but not satisfied because Mr. Trudeau is not specific in you want him to cut the number of temporary immigrants in half, and he says we don't disagree with the idea, but he doesn't give you any numbers. So you're disappointed?
Yes, I'm disappointed because I think it's about time that we put targets with figures. And the problem is urgent. So we cannot say we'll continue working for months and months about the principles. It's about time we put some targets.
And there is still $750 million on the table, though.
Right. So we were asking for $1 billion, so they offer $750 million. So we'll take the money, but we'll continue to ask for more.
Yeah, and that is such peak Quebec. We'll take the money and then we'll ask for more. Right? Was he called a fascist? Don't remember that. He's not the only one, and I'll have more to say about it. Doug Ford, David Eby, in British Columbia, they've all said things that are very, very similar to what you're hearing from the Alberta Premier now. And yet, the Alberta Premier is being called racist, leading a fascist government, anti-immigrant. I'm Rob Snowds, News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
All right, let me just drive this home for you, how what Premier Smith is saying is really not all that different from what other premiers have said in recent years about the state of the immigration system and the social capacity of the country to deal with the numbers that we're dealing with right now. Okay? Premier Ford in Ontario went off on the federal government not that long ago, saying it wasn't approving work permits fast enough, and that it was costing, he said it was costing Ontario, quote, a fortune, and that there are all kinds of people coming to Canada. They want to work, they want to start a new life, but it's molasses in Ottawa. The immigration system in Ottawa isn't approving work permits fast enough. And he said it's so bad that his government was going to start issuing its own work permits if Ottawa didn't get its act together because Ontario couldn't afford it anymore. Play that clip for me. Clip 1 up.
I have a tremendous amount of asylum seekers that are up in Etobicoke and in the hotels They're healthy, they're willing to work, they're hardworking people, but they're waiting over 2 years. And they're just sucking off the system nonstop, not their fault. The fault falls under immigration, that it takes over 2 years to get a work permit. So as we're paying education, paying healthcare, paying their rent in hotels, which is exorbitant, they want to get out there and they want to be like every other Canadian. They want to find a job. They want to be able to first start off renting a condo or part of a house and then buying a house. But we're tired of waiting around. I can't wait around. It's costing our province an absolute fortune. Just last year, we were close to 100,000 asylum seekers, and I'm still waiting to get paid back from the federal government. That's one issue.
As is usually the case with Doug Ford, a few weeks went by, and then he climbed down on that and said, okay, we won't issue our own work permits. But even at that time, he didn't sound as though everything's just fine. Play the other clip. Ford.
The people that are there, that are sitting there collecting, we're collecting welfare, they're collecting free schooling, free healthcare and everything. I want them working. And if we can support the federal government, maybe they don't have the capacity to handle it, we're willing to do that. I just want people to be out there working. Do I want the whole immigration system on the shoulders of the province? No. Would I like to be treated the same way as Quebec? Yes.
Well, it's the same treatment as Quebec. Same sort of thing you hear from Premier Smith in Alberta. Doug Ford's not usually called a fascist. Remember, the $750 million Quebec got from the Trudeau government. And Quebec has more control over its immigration system than any other province. Been that way for decades. Now, when news hit that Mr. Trudeau gave the Legault government $750 million to help with immigration and asylum seekers, you know who hit the roof? The great lefty. The great progressive on the West Coast, Premier David Eby of British Columbia, the New Democrat. He hit the roof and said, if Quebec is going to get all that money, where's the money for us? It's not like it's just a Quebec thing. Play that.
A little bit of frustration. I saw today $750 million for Quebec to deal with immigration pressures from the federal government. They've offered us nothing, $0. With 10,000 people coming to our province every 37 days, we have right now refugees and homeless shelters. We have international students grappling with a lack of supports in the community. We've had to take really significant steps to address some of the problems that we've seen in that sector. And we see rampant abuse of the federal labor market program, where people are buying and selling it without repercussion for tens of thousands of dollars. And so to see a single province agreement with Quebec is an underlining of a sense of frustration that I heard around the table. And I won't put this on anyone else, but I'll say for British Columbia, how frustrated we are to see the money being showered down on Quebec and Ontario, and us grappling around for what's left over. It's not acceptable. It is not okay. And part of the pressure that these young people are seeing is a lot of federal resource, time and energy, money, tax credits, effort going to those two provinces at the expense, in my opinion, of the West. And it needs to change. That announcement today with Quebec, frankly, is the straw that broke this camel's back.
David Eby, hardly known as, big right winger. But what is he saying? What is he saying that's so different from Premier Smith in Alberta? He's saying we're stretched, can't afford it, overstretched social systems, housing, healthcare, education, overwhelmed. And Ottawa's not helping unless it thinks it will lose seats in Quebec. And to a lesser extent, Toronto, because the mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, managed to squeeze the Liberals for $160 million for the same sort of thing. So now it's Danielle Smith's turn to say essentially the same thing that all these other premiers are saying. But she's a believer in direct democracy and is going to have a referendum about it. And for her trouble, she gets called a fascist, when to me, it's really not all that controversial. 1-833-668-2577 is Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're the home stretch here, in the home stretch of Talkback. K. Lewis. Am I saying that right? K. Lewis?
Yeah, no, it's Kalis. Everybody
Kalis.
gets it wrong, so don't worry about it. I know it's spelled funny.
Okay. What's on your mind?
Well, I know the previous individual you had on was talking about medical assisted death. And also I was interested in the economic discussion that you were having. So my background is that I'm actually autistic. So I've actually been doing geopolitics and military history and defense economics for 15, 20 years. So I have a bit more of an in-depth perspective. I'm more centrist. But unfortunately, I have firsthand experience with having disabilities through both chronic pain. I experienced chronic pain syndrome for 6 years now. And then my mother, unfortunately, was born with spina bifida, which is a birth defect of the spine. So her spine was malformed at birth. Whoever the surgeon that she had at birth was fantastic and managed to preserve her mobility and stuff. But in the last decade in particular, her health has just gone off a cliff. And she's at the point where she's actually considered medical assisted death, unfortunately. And it's very hard to deal with because the support services aren't really there for people with severe disabilities, and I'm disabled myself, being a partial caretaker, essentially.
Okay. So what are you worried about, and what do you think should happen from a policy point of view?
Well, my thing is that I feel like for instance, now in Alberta, I'm on AISH, and now they want to split the program into two separate ones for reasons that are beyond me, outside of, I don't disagree with the idea of creating programs to help people with disabilities find employment, because that's a severe barrier for people with disabilities, like having employment and having a place to go. Because one of the major things about disabilities that create the issue of wanting to create death is actually social isolation. There's actually a loneliness epidemic often, and people don't realize that, it's as much stress hormone as a punch to the face.
Right.
So when you get disabled, you lose your social ability. And I already experienced this being autistic, but I've slowly found a way, despite my chronic pain, through sports. As a goalie and also full contact football still as an adult, playing it. I was with Calgary Wolfpack, and now I'm volunteering with South Calgary.
Just because we're a little tight on time, we've been kind of bouncing around here.
Sorry.
So your main concern then would be, because this was raised when we talked about this earlier in the week, the increase in socialization, the lack of social supports, we have documented cases of this. It has led to people seeking out MAID. Is that something that you're concerned about?
Yeah, and
not because they're at the end of life or terminally ill, but rather because they're losing the will to live because they feel just life is not worth living anymore. Is that how you feel?
Unfortunately, that is one of the things.
Well, that's rather sad. That's a sad state of affairs, because that's not what MAID was ever intended to be when the country went down this road. All right, that's all of our time. I wish we could have ended on a happier note, but we will be back on Monday, and hopefully when we do, we will be celebrating another gold medal for Canada in hockey. Have a great weekend, everybody. I'm Rob Snow. It's Talkback News Radio.